Emily stood behind the glass counter of the new jewelry boutique, her fingers carefully arranging the delicate chains and bracelets in neat rows. The soft glow from the overhead lights shimmered on every polished surface, reflecting a world that felt both glamorous and distant. She glanced down at the pendant resting against her collarbone, a simple silver piece, its design unassuming but meaningful. It was a gift from her late grandmother, a small emblem of strength she wore quietly under the watchful eyes of the luxury crowd. Tonight was the grand opening of the store, an event packed with elegantly dressed guests sipping champagne and admiring the sparkling displays. Emily's role was behind the scenes, assisting customers and managing inventory, and she was content in her own space, appreciating the chance to be surrounded by beauty without any expectation to flaunt wealth. Then, a voice cut through the hum of polite conversation, sharp and confident. Veronica entered the boutique as if the polished marble floor belonged to her personally. Her designer dress swayed perfectly with each step, glossy hair catching the light like a woman who never doubted her place in the world. A small group followed, laughing softly, their attention attuned to her every move. Her eyes locked on Emily's modest pendant immediately. "Is that all you wear?" Veronica's voice rose just enough to draw the room's glance. A slow smile curved her lips, cruel and calculating. "In this place? How quaint." The circle of guests around them chuckled nervously, some uncomfortable, some entertained. The air shifted, and eyes settled on Emily. She stood still, heart pounding, the simple pendant feeling heavier than ever. Veronica's laughter rang out again, sharp and clear, as she took a step closer. Veronica's eyes gleamed with a mix of amusement and superiority as she surveyed Emily from head to toe, the simple silver pendant a stark contrast to the glimmering jewels adorning the guests around them. "You know," Veronica began, her voice dripping with condescension, "it's really quite amusing to see someone so modest dressed up in a place like this." She flicked a glance toward the pristine displays filled with sparkling diamonds and intricate gold pieces. "Do you even belong here, Emily? Or is it just your little dream to be among us?" Emily's heart thudded in her chest, an uncomfortable heat rushing to her cheeks. The room was silent now, all eyes focused on the unfolding scene. Some guests shifted uncomfortably in their gilded shoes and silk gowns, others seemed eager to watch the drama, to see if the saleswoman would crumble under Veronica's barbs. Veronica's friends tittered behind her, their laughter sharp and merciless. One of them, a tall blonde with an icy stare, leaned over and whispered something that made another friend chuckle. The cruel undertone was unmistakable. This was entertainment, and Emily was the target. But Emily straightened, inhaling slowly, unwilling to let the sting of humiliation show. "I'm proud of my pendant," she said softly, her voice steady but carrying a quiet strength. "It means a lot to me." She dared to meet Veronica's gaze. "Just like the pieces in this store mean something to their owners, not just a price tag or a show." Veronica smirked, eyes narrowing in disbelief. "That's adorable," she said, voice low and mocking. Then louder, so that all could hear, "It's just a cheap trinket, really. You wear it like it's special, but it's nothing compared to the treasures here." She gestured disdainfully to the glittering collection behind Emily. "People like you shouldn't pretend to understand this world. It's for people who have earned it." A ripple of laughter followed, some polite, some outright cruel. One man in a tailored suit whispered loudly enough for Emily to hear, "She's got a point. This isn't the place for humble little girls playing dress up." Another guest, a woman in a shimmering gown, glanced away, her expression tight, as if wishing the confrontation would end. Emily felt the weight of 1,000 eyes on her, feeling suddenly small and exposed. The familiar thrill she'd felt working behind the counter was replaced by a sinking knot of shame and helplessness. Her fingers gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles white. Tears threatened, but she blinked them away. "Please," she said quietly, "I'm just here to do my job." Her voice was firm enough, but it barely cut through the murmurs now growing in the room. Veronica's laughter cut sharply through the tension. "Do your job," she asked, voice ringing with sarcasm. Why don't you show everyone exactly what that is? We're all dying to see what a saleswoman like you can really do. She leaned forward, eyes glittering. Or are you just here to stand behind the counter and look pretty in that sad little pendant? Emily's cheeks burned, the humiliation deeper than she'd expected. Around her, heads turned, some whispering, a few openly smirking. The atmosphere shifted from curious to hostile. She felt like a specimen under a microscope, every ordinary flaw magnified. A young man nearby whispered loudly to his date, maybe she's just pretending to be part of this crowd. The word stung more than any direct insult. Emily's instinct was to retreat, to run away from the unforgiving spotlight Veronica had thrown on her. But even as her legs trembled slightly, her mind sharpened. There was something in Veronica's challenge, a slight but undeniable invitation to prove herself. I'm happy to show you, Emily said quietly, surprising even herself. Her voice was calm now, edged with quiet determination. If you'll give me the chance. Veronica raised a brow, clearly intrigued and amused. You're on, she said with a slow smile, her friends leaning in, eager for a spectacle. The crowd closed in slightly, curiosity palpable. Emily stepped out from behind the counter, standing a little taller despite the churning mix of dread and resolve inside her. Veronica's friends whispered excitedly, comparing notes about their expectations and mocking smiles. This should be good, one murmured, the anticipation thick in the air. The store manager watched nervously from a distance, aware that the situation could turn either way but unsure how to intervene. Other staff exchanged uneasy glances but kept silent, fearing to disrupt the social power play unfolding before them. Emily glanced around, catching the eyes of a few guests who looked worried rather than entertained. A soft flush of sympathy sparked within her chest. She wasn't alone in feeling the sting of Veronica's cruelty. The heiress stepped closer, folding her arms. Go on then, Emily, she said, voice commanding. Show us what makes you worthy of standing here among the best, beyond that pathetic little pendant. Emily's breath hitched slightly, but she forced herself not to waver. She knew this wasn't just about the pendant or the jewelry store, it was about something deeper, the right to be seen and respected on her own terms. As the crowd's expectant silence deepened, Emily felt the full weight of every eye in the room, every hurtful word still ringing in her ears. But somewhere beneath the embarrassment and the fear, a quiet fire began to kindle inside her. Veronica's laughter echoed again, sharp and cruel. Well? Don't just stand there looking like a deer caught in headlights. Impress us. Emily swallowed hard. It felt as if all the world was waiting, and she was unbearably exposed. The smell of polished wood and expensive leather filled her senses, mingling with the muffled chatter and the distant clinking of crystal glasses. She took one step forward, every muscle tense, her heart pounding like a drum. Then another. The crowd parted slightly as she moved past the gleaming cases, all eyes following her uncertain path. Veronica's triumphant smile seemed to grow, certain the moment would end with Emily's public downfall. Emily reached the center of the showroom, where the most exclusive pieces were displayed. Her fingers brushed against one of the cases, then moved to touch the carefully crafted pendants arranged beneath the glass. She cleared her throat, voice steadying with a newfound resolve. I'm not just a saleswoman here, she began. I'm also a designer. A ripple of surprise spread through the guests. A few exchanged puzzled glances. Veronica's smile faltered, suspicion flickering in her eyes. Emily continued, some of these pieces, including the one I'm wearing, are from a collection I created. The designs focus on simplicity and strength, qualities I think everyone, regardless of their background, can relate to. Whispers blossomed across the room. The tone shifted subtly, curiosity overcoming sneers. Veronica took a step back, her posture stiffening as the crowd's attention turned fully toward Emily, who was now describing the inspiration behind the pendants with clear passion and pride. The group's laughter died down. The amusement on faces hardened into a silent respect that was almost palpable. Emily's hands moved gracefully as she gestured, weaving a story that was both captivating and genuine. The simple silver pendant, her grandmother's gift, was no longer just a cheap accessory but a symbol of resilience, something deeply meaningful beneath its unassuming surface. The guests' eyes glowed with new understanding, some nodding appreciatively. The whispers transformed into murmurs of admiration. Even Veronica's friends looked unsettled, their previous confidence ebbing away. Emily's pulse steady, she realized the tide had turned. The room's energy vibrated with quiet awe rather than ridicule. Veronica stood silent, the smile wiped from her face, as the guests began to laugh, not at Emily, but at the earlier cruelty that now seemed petty and misplaced. The power had shifted. Emily's quiet strength had spoken far louder than Veronica's scorn had ever managed. The room hushed completely, the earlier murmur of whispers and titters fading as Emily continued speaking. Her voice, steady and sincere, carried a gentle passion that made even the most aloof guests lean in closer. "This pendant," she said, lifting it slightly so the soft silver caught the light, "has a story. It's not just a design, it's a symbol of endurance, inspired by the strength of the women in my family." A ripple of surprise passed through the crowd. Many faces that had only moments before mocked her now reflected interest, curiosity, and something approaching respect. Veronica's friends exchanged uneasy glances. The air felt charged, as though the atmosphere in the room itself had transformed. Emily's fingers lightly traced the smooth curve of the pendant. "I created this collection to remind people that beauty doesn't depend on extravagance. It's about what's meaningful and lasting. People underestimate simple elegance all the time, but there's power there, too, power not immediately obvious." Veronica's favoring smile faltered. For once, she was silent, swallowed by the unexpected turn of events. The triumphant smirk that had crowned her face vanished, replaced by a tightened expression of disbelief. The guests around them started to murmur appreciatively. One woman, holding a flute of champagne, nodded. "It's remarkable how a simple piece can carry such depth," she said softly, casting a glance toward Veronica that hinted at disapproval of her earlier cruelty. Emily stepped closer to the display case and pointed out a few other elegant, understated pieces in the collection. "Each one is a story, crafted for someone who values meaning over bling." A man who had been leaning against the back wall stepped forward, admiration clear in his eyes. "I didn't realize the designer worked here, right behind the counter," he remarked appreciatively. "You've clearly got talent." A smile lifted Emily's lips, a mixture of relief and quiet pride blooming inside her. Veronica fought to maintain a semblance of composure. She opened her mouth as if to argue, but no words came. The audience's newfound admiration had left her isolated. The group surrounding Veronica grew smaller as individuals drifted away, their conversation buzzing with praise for Emily's work. Veronica's friends, once so sure and gloating, cast furtive glances among themselves, their earlier cruelty dissolving under the unspoken verdict of the crowd. Emily's voice, confident now, continued. "I believe jewelry is more than adornment. It's a reflection of who we are and what we've overcome." Her glance met Veronica's, steady and fearless. "So, perhaps next time before mocking someone's choice, you might see the story beneath the surface." Laughter bubbled up, not mocking, but warm and full of approval. It was as if the room collectively turned its back on Veronica's arrogance and embraced Emily's authenticity instead. A few guests approached Emily, eager to learn more about her designs, asking questions about her inspirations and techniques. The warmth was contagious. Emily's nervousness vanished, replaced by a feeling of belonging she hadn't dared imagine when Veronica's taunts began. Veronica lurked by the edge of the crowd, her usual poise slipping as she folded her arms tightly, appearing smaller amidst the sea of faces now clearly aligned with the saleswoman. One of the guests, an older gentleman in a sharply tailored suit, chuckled quietly and addressed Veronica. "You might want to rethink your approach next time." These people have more going on than meets the eye. Veronica's cheeks flushed, a rare break in her perfected facade. She glanced around and, as Emily engaged graciously with the guests, suddenly found herself on the outside looking in. Emily's talent and composure had not only silenced the mockery but had flipped the room's social dynamics entirely. The crowd's laughter was no longer at her expense but at Veronica's failed attempt to belittle. A small group formed around Emily as guests admired her work and complimented her dedication. The sense of camaraderie soothed the sting of the earlier humiliation, replacing it with genuine connection. Veronica, feeling the shift keenly, found herself shrinking, a woman unmasked in her vanity. She had been so sure that her quick wit and wealth would keep her safe in this environment, but Emily's quiet confidence had dismantled the illusion. With the crowd's attention fixed on Emily, Veronica made a small, reluctant step back. Her friends followed, their laughter subdued and nothing like the earlier uproar. Emily's eyes scanned the room, gently filled with a quiet triumph that wasn't boastful but simply the truth shining through. The moment marked a turning point, not just for her, but for everyone who witnessed the unexpected reversal. The respect and laughter now enveloping her was sweeter than any jewel. The boutique felt warmer somehow, less about status and more about genuine appreciation. Emily resumed her place behind the counter to a round of approving nods. The pendant she wore now seemed to gleam with new significance, a quiet emblem of victory that needed no words. Veronica's earlier confidence lay shattered, and the room, once her domain, was now undeniably Emily's. Guests continued to talk animatedly about the designs, and Emily's presence became the heart of the evening. The heiress vanished from the spotlight, a distant memory as the party embraced a new kind of elegance, one born from humility, talent, and authenticity. Emily's journey from mocking target to admired artist had transformed the night and everyone in it. The room buzzed with renewed conversation, but the story of the silver pendant and its wearer left a lasting impression, a secret victory shared by all who had been part of the unfolding moment. After the guests' chatter settled into groups around the boutique, Emily moved with grace back behind the counter. But unlike before, this was no longer a place where she felt invisible. The admiration in the eyes of the customers sparked a warmth in her chest that went beyond the glow of the chandeliers overhead. Tonight, she wasn't just the modest saleswoman who wore a simple pendant, she was a creator, a storyteller, a woman who quietly carried the rich textures of her own history. As the crowd thinned and the boutique's music shifted to a softer, more intimate tune, Emily took a deep breath. Moments ago, she had laid bare a part of herself she seldom shared. Now, she allowed the story to unfold in her mind, the story that shaped the woman standing in the gleaming store, simple pendant resting softly against her skin. She had come from a world very different than the luxury enveloping the boutique tonight. Born into a family with a lineage of wealth, expectations had been laid upon her long before she could understand them. As the only daughter of a prominent business magnate, Emily had been groomed for a life of corporate boardrooms and opulent social functions. But beneath the shimmering surface, she carried an unyielding desire to create something genuine, something her own. After years of steely presentations and high-pressure meetings that drained her spirit, she quietly walked away from the gilded cage. Trading tailored suits for comfortable clothes, she pursued her passion for design, studying jewelry making in small workshops where she could lose herself in the delicate art of crafting. It was here that Emily found solace and purpose, shaping silver and gold into expressions of stories, emotions, and heritage. Her grandmother's pendant had been her first muse, a simple piece but rich with memories of enduring courage during difficult times. From that inspiration, she forged her minimalistic collection, one that celebrated quiet strength rather than ostentation. Choosing to work anonymously in this boutique was deliberate. She wanted her creations to stand on their own merit, unshadowed by the weight of family reputation. The simplicity of her attire was a reflection of this choice, a statement that true value wasn't flashy but deeply personal. Though the evening's confrontation had shaken her momentarily, the courage she found in that space surprised even herself. She had always known her work would speak for her one day, but rarely had she realized how compelling that voice could be in person. The recognition from the guests, the respect that replaced scorn, it was more than a personal triumph. It was a vindication of her belief that authenticity resonated, no matter the setting. Emily's gaze drifted toward the display cases, where her pieces gleamed softly, each one carrying the essence of her vision. She understood now that wearing that simple pendant wasn't a mark of poverty or insignificance. It was a badge of her journey, of resilience woven quietly into precious metals. The episode with Veronica had unveiled a raw truth about judgment, how quickly society can dismiss what doesn't glitter loud enough, and how swiftly it can be won back through sincerity and mastery. But more than that, it revealed Emily's own determination to reveal her truth without apology. As the boutique staff prepared to wind down for the evening, Emily exchanged smiles with a few remaining guests who lingered, intrigued by the woman behind the designs. Some commented on her humility, others on the depth that underpinned her creations. Each conversation was a thread, weaving together the rich tapestry of her life and work. Away from the crowd, Emily felt her heartbeat slow, the adrenaline ebbing away. Yet the memory of Veronica's expression lingered, a fleeting flicker of vulnerability in the otherwise impenetrable heiress. It was a reminder that while appearances conferred power, true strength was something far more complex and often quietly held. For all her wealth and status, Veronica had been unprepared for Emily's quiet grace and the unshakable foundation beneath the humble exterior. It was a lesson not only for the heiress but for everyone present that night, that courage and integrity can outshine the most dazzling jewels, and that stories reside not just in riches, but in the hearts that shape them. Emily straightened a necklace on the display rack, a small smile touching her lips. The simplicity of the pendant she wore had sparked a transformation, as if the charm itself bore the power to forge unlikely victories. Though the night was ending, this was only the beginning of a path she would continue to walk with quiet confidence. The guests had seen her moment of revelation, yet Emily knew her true journey was daily, in the choices she made, the passion she invested, and the humility she carried. She had chosen a different kind of success, one measured by meaningful connections and creative fulfillment rather than flashy titles or social standing. As she closed the store's front door behind her, the cool evening air wrapped around her like a gentle promise. The city lights flickered like jewels against the night sky, but Emily's thoughts were inward, centered on the quiet strength she wore, the strength her grandmother's pendant symbolized and the strength she would continue to build. Above all, she felt peace in knowing who she was, what she had endured, and the delicate art she crafted as an extension of her own spirit. The simplicity of her pendant was no accident, it was the emblem of a truth that transcended appearances. Tonight had been a revelation, not just to those who had watched, but to Emily herself. And as she stepped forward into the calm night, the future shimmered softly, a promise stitched not in gold or diamonds, but in resilience, integrity, and the unshakable power of authenticity. In the days following the grand opening, word spread quickly among the city's social circles about the night when Emily, the unassuming saleswoman in the simple silver pendant, had captured the room with her talent and quiet dignity. The reverberations were subtle but unmistakable, rippling through the boutique's clientele and beyond. Veronica, once the confident queen of the soiree, found herself at the center of a very different kind of attention. The whispers that had once accompanied her sharp laughter now carried tones of disapproval. Invitations to exclusive gatherings suddenly arrived later, or not at all. Behind closed doors, conversations that used to include her spirited jabs now circled cautiously around, wary of the woman who had so publicly faltered. The pressure mounted invisibly, and in the polished offices of the boutique, the store manager, who had previously dreaded the public spectacle, found herself fielding calls from important patrons. Feedback highlighted the scandal of Veronica's behavior. Her elitist comments and public mockery were deemed unbecoming of the refined image the boutique sought to project. Though no formal action was immediately announced, the message was clear: such arrogance and cruelty had no place here. One afternoon, Veronica received a discreet summons to meet with the store's director. The encounter was brief but decisive. Her position as a VIP guest and social promoter for the store was quietly revoked, and she was informed that future appearances at such events would be reconsidered. The thin veil of influence she had wielded was beginning to crumble. The sting of this silent demotion was deeper than Veronica had anticipated. She retreated from the social scene she once ruled with an iron grip, forced to reconsider the biting words she had wielded so recklessly. Meanwhile, Emily's life had shifted in delicate, profound ways. The respect she'd earned that night was not fleeting admiration but a lasting acknowledgement of her skill and spirit. New clients began requesting meetings not just with salespeople but with the designer herself, seeking pieces with the stories she could tell, jewelry that transcended mere ornamentation. Her calendar filled with appointments and opportunities to share her craft in ways she had only dreamed of. Invitations came to speak at artisan events and design workshops, recognizing her as a voice of authenticity and creativity. Emily's work was no longer a quiet pursuit behind the counter, it was blooming into the passionate career she had long yearned for. Amid this whirl of success, Emily maintained the same warmth and humility, qualities that endeared her further to customers and colleagues alike. She knew her confidence wasn't born from privilege but from resilience and love for her craft, a story far richer than any inheritance. One afternoon, amidst the buzzing bustle of the boutique, Veronica hesitated at the entrance, uncertain and visibly altered. Her usual poise was replaced by a tighter, more subdued presence. Making her way to the counter, she caught Emily's eye. For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy with unspoken words. Then Veronica spoke, voice quieter, less sharp than before. "Emily, I wanted to say. I'm sorry. For what I said. It wasn't right." Emily regarded her earnest apology without bitterness. She nodded slowly. "Thank you, Veronica. That means a lot." There was no grand forgiveness exchanged, no dramatic reconciliation, just the honest acknowledgement of a moment where lessons were learned and boundaries respected. Veronica lingered briefly before nodding and quietly exiting, her footsteps soft against the floor. Emily turned back to her work, focusing on the delicate chain she was holding, the small clasp fitting together with ease. It was a simple movement, yet symbolic, an emblem of closure and new beginnings. Later, as Emily prepared the boutique for closing, she thought about how public humiliation had unexpectedly led to vindication. The night of the grand opening had laid bare the harsh judgments people were quick to make, and the surprising strength one could find when standing unflinchingly in truth. Her thoughts turned to the viewers of her story, the people who might recognize in her experience something familiar. The pain of being underestimated, the fear of exposure, and ultimately, the quiet triumph that comes from embracing self-worth. "Imagine if you were in Emily's shoes," she mused. "What would you have done when faced with that sharp, public cruelty? Would you have walked away or stood your ground? Could you have found your voice in the crowd?" There was power in asking the question because real strength isn't in never falling down, it's in the choice to rise. Emily gave a small smile as the lights dimmed around her. The pendant resting against her collarbone caught the muted glow and shimmered softly, still a symbol, but now also a reminder of the night her story became one worth telling. And to those who had watched her journey unfold, a simple invitation hung in the air: share your thoughts below. How would you have handled such a moment? What would you have done? Because every story is richer when told together. As the boutique store finally closed for the night, Emily whispered a quiet farewell to the day's quiet victory. If this story moved you, she thought, don't forget to subscribe and join me for the next. With a patient hope for what was still waiting, she looked forward toward the horizon, ready for the next chapter to shine.